Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. Hello, welcome to the Content Magazine podcast. I'm Daniel Garcia, the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates, and we are here today in the CURA Contemporary Gallery and now Art Space with the director of the gallery, Ellie Honl-Herman.
Yes. Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're here. You're good. You'll be here every day because you work here.
Yes.
So thank you for taking time to tell us a little bit about your life and then how you came to be the director of the CURA Contemporary here in Morgan Hill.
Thank you.
I kind of just want to start out though about your own kind of like artistic and creative journey. Mm-hmm. You grew up in Wisconsin, is that right?
I did. Yeah, right in the middle, central Wisconsin, a town of about 35,000, Stevens Point.
35,000.
Yeah.
Wow, that's tiny.
Yeah, it's pretty small, but they have a university there, the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point.
Okay.
So they had an art department, a really good forestry department, like just a really good kind of liberal arts university.
Yeah, cool. So then you grew up there, and then you also went to your undergrad. You did there too. So you
I
were
actually,
kinda like,
so I did my undergrad in Minnesota actually at a
okay.
small private school called St. Olaf College.
St. Old College. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and then actually, okay, well, before we even get
Yeah.
there, before we get to your college, because I know college, you kind of were thinking about architecture and psychology, right? But tell us a little about your own kind of like art experience, because your mom was an art teacher?
Yes, I was very lucky. My mom was an art teacher. She retired about 10 years ago, but yeah, so she was an art teacher in the public school system in Stevens Point. So she taught like first through sixth grade for about maybe 20 years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then when I went off to college, then she moved up to high school and taught advanced drawing and painting, ceramics, darkroom photography. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that was very informative having my mom be an art teacher. My brother and I, we had like a whole cabinet full of art supplies. We were lucky enough to travel a lot. My dad was a dentist, so he had kind of a more flexible schedule sometimes. So we took trips to Chicago and Baltimore, and wherever we went, we always went to museums, and that always included art museums. So my mom took my brother and I, even when we were little kids, to art museums, and so I just grew up looking at art and just kind of feeling at home in art museums. One of my favorite places at the Art Institute of Chicago, the Chicago Art Museum, is the Thorn Rooms.
Oh, yeah.
It's like these little miniature rooms, and it was just so magical as a kid and even as an adult to kind of experience those.
Yeah, cool. So then you grew up with art being an acceptable like way of life and expression and all that kind of stuff. Did you,
Yes.
at an early age then, because of you kind of like being in that environment, did you already find yourself drawn to creativity and creating things? And
Yeah, I loved art class. Even back as far as kindergarten, we'd have art projects, and I just remember that was one of my favorite classes.
Yeah.
Just getting my hands in it and kind of using my imagination a lot.
yeah. So then when you were like in high school and then getting ready to transition to go to college and all that thing for a career, were you thinking kind of in the arts or was it because architecture was kind of like a melding of the two, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I actually did an apprenticeship as like a junior and senior in high school for a landscape architecture company.
Oh,
So
cool.
I took like this CAD drawing class, and I was really thinking more architecture. And so I took So I had that apprenticeship and actually worked in a business setting, but I always had kind of art that I liked to do on the side. So I did take several art classes in high school, but my focus was more kind of like on the AP classes and the architecture and the math and the science and things like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, architecture does make sense. Like if you're into creativity and art, and then kind of mix the two together. Yeah. So then you went to college there, and then you were doing architecture and psychology, but how did then that transition into being more like, I think you ended with a major in studio art, right?
I did, yeah.
What happened that changed that trajectory?
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough that I went to this liberal arts school that had really good academics, but I also made sure that the school I chose had a really good art department, because I really enjoyed doing that too. And so I was lucky enough to be able to go to college and explore, like take the classes that I wanted to. And so I took all the calculus and all the physics I needed to do architecture, but then I always took art. And then a formative experience was my sophomore year of college. I did a semester abroad in Southeast Asia.
Oh, wow, cool.
And that was just such a wonderful experience.
What country was it?
So we went to Hong Kong for a month and then traveled through China for a couple weeks, kind of visiting all the big sites. The Terracotta Warriors and the Shanghai and Beijing. And then we spent 2.5 months in Thailand, where we actually learned the language, the speaking. We didn't learn to read or write because their alphabet's very different, but we learned to kind of to speak and communicate, and we stayed with the host family.
How cool.
And so I think that whole experience it was so eye-opening, just being somewhere that wasn't Western culture, and just made me really patient, because most of the time I didn't know what was going on. So I just had to kind of be patient and kind of go with the flow. And when I got back to college, then I changed to pre-med for a while, because I love school. I loved learning new things. But then at a certain point, my dad set me down, and he's like, you could be a doctor, you could be a dentist, you could be these other things, but I don't really see that as you. I don't see that being the life that you want. I don't see that being like your personality. And so he really gave me the permission to really do what I
Did you
loved.
feel, are you the oldest?
I am. I'm the oldest daughter.
Right.
Yes.
So did you feel a little bit, for whatever reason happens, like the dutiful, responsible, and so architecture or medicine was like the responsible kind of thing? Yeah,
and I love studying, and I was really smart, and like when you're smart and you do well in school, like you're supposed to do one of those, like become a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah, totally,
But then so with his permission, and then really thinking about it, like art just came so naturally to me. It just was the most fun. It just was the most fun. It was the most me. So
that's cool. Was your dad, that's pretty insightful, like to do that. Was he just in general that kind of like engaged type of parent?
I'm very close with both my parents. And my mom, I obviously had her support, but getting my dad's support was really kind of the spark.
That's cool. So then, traveling, lots of options, dad sitting you down, and then is that when you said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pursue kind of more like a career in art then? Is that what happened? Yeah,
pretty much. I changed my major to studio art, and I loved my printmaking class, so I was able to kind of focus in on that a little bit. And then when I graduated, I had this great program where you could apply, and they would select a certain amount of art students to come back for an apprenticeship, which meant that you had a 4th year that you could use the facilities, and you'd get 2 group shows with kind of the other apprentices. So I was able to build up a body of work to apply to grad school with.
Yeah, awesome.
So
cool.
I was able to do that.
Your studio major, but then your main focus then in grad work was printmaking. I know you did photography. You got into photography.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because yes, it actually was photography too, and combining it. So at the time, I took 35 millimeter photographs, developed them in a dark room, and then basically made them into photo printing plates, like printmaking plates that I could ink up with ink and then run through the press, and that kind of allowed me to have that kind of hands-on to the photography process, beyond just the dark room, but like changing the color and like going back in and scraping away the image and like so printing things on top of it.
And kind of like, because it seems like you've done some stuff with fabric. You did cyanotype, right? And then I guess you had done calligraphy a little bit too, or a little bit of I did a kind of, when I started teaching, I did more kind of stop motion, but I've always kind of taken printmaking as a way to
kind of incorporate other mediums
Yeah.
or to create multiples for kind of installation work.
Yeah. I have to do this because I'm a photographer. Like, and I saw that you on your Instagram you had got a Pentax 6.7.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Did you use that a lot when, like, in your earlier days, or pretty much 35 millimeter?
I got that when I first moved out to California.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'd always wanted kind of a
Medium
larger,
format,
medium format.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
learning, getting kind of a light meter and
Yeah.
doing some double exposures with that was
Yeah.
really
Yeah, I saw you kind of like for photography, just to kind of go in that. Did you like, was some of your influences more kind of like street photography and kind of like that candid, the decisive moment or something like that, or who were some of your photographers? I mean, if you remember, I know that you did.
I loved the Starn brothers, Doug and the Starn brothers.
Were they the ones that did like they're
twins?
They're the twins, and they were like
Yeah.
late 80s, early or mid 90s, and they did huge kind of things with like they did like a big Jesus type of thing, right?
Yeah, all kinds of different things.
then
Where
they did,
printed out these transparencies
Right.
and did installations and kind of fit different photographs together and manipulated them. And so I saw them. I took a trip out to New York through college for the month of January when I was a senior, and we went to like so many galleries and museums, and so that also was a very kind of influential experience I had in college, was seeing New York for that period of time and living there and just being exposed to so much artwork in different institutions, and we also got to visit a lot of artists as well and saw their studios and how they worked kind of how they got to where they were.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I remember their work. It was pretty moving, like that. It was multimedia, like tape and textures.
Yeah, the tape, the visual like process. I loved how they just left the tape right there, and
it was kind of cool. Good. Okay, so then now, did you actually then have some exhibitions and stuff like that you did with some of your work, or how did that go?
Yeah. So during the apprenticeship, so my mom actually, since high school, had kind of helped me apply, kind of taught me the process of how to find shows and how to apply to shows. So I had some experience, but then when I was doing that apprenticeship thing, they gave us spaces both semesters to show our work.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, that's kind of cool, because that really then, for your current position here at CURA, really probably helps you understand like the artist's journey and how important it is to have a place to display their work, right?
Yes.
But let's not get there yet. We're jumping ahead. Okay. What I'm really kind of curious about, though, because you are back in the Midwest or whatever it is, but then you taught a little bit in Arizona, right? So you had so you were doing art, and then you taught a little. How did you get into teaching? What was that kind of? And then during this time, were you thinking like, I'm going to be a gallery full-time artist who's going to exhibit and show and sell? And was that kind of like the dream that you were thinking at that particular time?
Yeah, so I graduated from St. Olaf, and then I had a body of work to apply to grad schools with. So then I ended up choosing to go to the University of Iowa, in Iowa City, Iowa, of all places. But there's kind of this thing about printmaking in the Midwest, where like painting was really big in New York during the post-war, and the printmakers kind of found this like kind of openness to printmaking in the Midwest.
Interesting.
So the schools in the Midwest had the strength in printmaking, among other things. But so I went to Iowa, and it was a very traditional program at the time, and so I learned lithography.
Cool.
I did more etching. At the time, screen printing wasn't even part of the printmaking department. It was part of the photography department.
Oh, okay. Kind of makes sense.
And then a new teacher came in, Anita Jung, and she basically kind of transformed the program, and it was very inspirational to me.
Yeah, cool.
And I hear her kind of in the back of my head to this day. But so it was in that program I my MFA was in printmaking, but I had a minor in intermedia.
Okay.
And so intermedia was kind of this neat program. It kind of was everything that was kind of outside of the general kind of art. So it was like performance, it was video, it was installation.
Wow.
And so that combined with printmaking really kind of opened up the door to me, along with my mentor, Anita Jung.
Yeah, that's cool. So did you do that? Did you do dabble with some video and do some performance and installation pieces and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, so I did some video and combined it with some very mediocre kind of stop motion at the time.
Yeah, it's cool.
But then that kind of influenced me to do more stop motion with my prints later on.
Yeah, cool. And then how did that lead you into then kind of like teaching or?
Yeah. So I was able to teach my last year in grad school. So I taught, I think, a beginning to printmaking class, so which was just kind of everything. Yeah. And then I also, I taught 2 semesters of that. It's hard to keep everything straight. So I taught 2 semesters of kind of introduction to printmaking.
Nice.
So it was, a project kind of for each media, and I loved it. I loved the teaching. I kind of come from a long line of teachers. As I said, my mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, my aunts are teachers. So I grew up doing a lot of babysitting and kind of, I did art projects with the people I babysat, and so it just kind of came naturally. But I need to back up a little bit. My first year in grad school, I got a job working at the University Art Museum at Iowa, and it's a really fantastic museum. They have a Jackson Pollock. They have the one that was in Peggy Guggenheim's foyer, the home.
Wow.
So
it's
a really famous piece, and so I got to work with their collection. And
what was the main role? Was it kind of like an internship? So it was kind of everything, or
it was kind of like a preparator,
or?
kind of a student worker. So I did a lot of painting, a lot of patching of walls, placing labels, but then just kind of seeing a lot of behind the scenes about how the other kind of normally employed people work there. So that was really formative.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you had those opportunities, and then that led you to, but you were still
teaching. Yes,
to teaching. Yeah, I'm trying to. So then it got you into teaching, and then.
Yeah, so I graduated at the worst time, 2008.
Oh, okay. All right, nice.
So I was able to.
.com time.
Yeah. So. The fall of 2008, I got kind of an emergency teaching position. Someone had to have some medical care, and so I moved to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and taught a semester there. So I taught a couple different printmaking classes. And then, luckily, I got I got a artist residency at Colibri Art Institute in Berkeley that winter, kind of spring, which is good because at the end of that semester, all the teaching jobs had dried up. They canceled the job searches just because nobody knew what was happening with funding.
Yeah.
So, that was a little bit of a scary time. But
how long was that residency for?
It was for, I think I was out there for 2.5 months.
Out here in Berkeley?
Yeah, and it was...
Had you been to California before?
No.
Okay.
I think that was my first time.
Yeah.
So you always hear all these things about California, and so I went to Berkeley. I lived up in Albany. And
nice. Yeah. And
so,
you were doing printmaking and multimedia type?
I was doing printmaking. It was just a fabulous place. I mean, they had everything from Epson printers to etching presses. I did photogravure there, so it was just you could do everything from old to new, and everything just you could combine things together. And the other people that were there working were just so welcoming and inspiring, and just I was able to create this new body of work there that really kind of, I think, helped me get my teaching jobs when they eventually appeared again.
Yeah. So then, but to get a residency, it's not just I'm sure they didn't find you on the internet and say, hey, come do a residency. You had to apply.
I did.
Right.
Yeah.
So were you at that particular time? You were kind of graduating, looking for different opportunities. So were you kind of scrolling, or I don't know how? In 2008, what do? You don't use your phone.
I think there was
the yellow pages. You look.
So it was. Well, to look for residencies, I think there was like a book.
Okay.
You know, so I had the book. I photocopied the book, but then there was college art association.
Okay.
That had a lot of like postings for jobs and opportunities and things like that. So I think I was on there a lot.
And you have to apply.
Yeah, it was a lot of word of mouth, like, oh, I did a residency here, it was great, check this out. There were some websites, but it was still kind of the early days. But,
well, I think that's the thing is like you hear people doing residencies and stuff like that, which is a great opportunity, but you still have to apply. You have to find it. You have to do the work in order to get that.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're still competing in a way against hundreds of. Yeah. So, well, congratulations on getting the residency. Now, okay, I'm going to jump and I'm going to skip because somehow you ended up here in California to live. How did that happen?
Yes.
Like, what brought you to the
Well,
West?
I had that great experience in Berkeley, so I knew that I loved California, but I applied for teaching jobs, and you just kind of, there's so few teaching jobs, especially in printmaking, that you kind of have to go wherever the job is.
Sure, yeah.
So, I was able to get a job at Arizona State University. That was my first like full-time, real teaching job. And so I moved across the country. I just loaded stuff up in my car and moved there. And I was only supposed to be for a year, but they had me back for a second year, which is great. And I met my husband there. And then we moved together to Indiana. So I had another kind of visiting assistant position at Indiana University in Bloomington.
Okay.
And while we were there, he ended up going to graduate school, so business graduate school.
Okay.
So I was there at Indiana for 3 years, and at the end of my 3 years, my husband had his MBA, and so he got a job out here in San Jose.
Okay.
And so
Is he
we
in
moved
tech
out here.
or something like that?
Yes,
Okay.
He was in tech, the semiconductor industry. So we moved out here and lived up in San Jose for a year, and we really liked it, but we happened to come down to Morgan Hill on a camping trip, and just felt great. It felt like, okay, this is a hometown. I was just surprised like how friendly people were. I remember we went to a park and these teenagers like walked by us and said hi, and I was like, what is this place?
Teenagers saying hello?
Yes, I'm like, what is this place? This is so we were like,
they're probably trying to sell you drugs.
I couldn't find any ulterior motives. Like, it was just teenagers like being friendly, which was not common. But so we were able to move down here, and we had kind of finished unpacking the boxes, and I wanted more of a steady job because I'd been doing photography. I'd been doing
like weddings and
headshots and events and stuff like that, and I just wanted more of a 9-to-5 job. And so I looked on Craigslist, and I found this job for a part-time framer at a frame shop down here in Morgan Hill. And so I was, this would be perfect. That's great. I have experience working with paper. I did my own framing as a printmaker. I did book art, so I kind of understand the engineering kind of the weight and how to make things all fit together and keep them safe. So I took that job, and I just loved it. Like, the time just flew by when you get involved in a project. It just like, I did a whole day of work, and it felt like I'd only been there for like 2 hours.
So this is going to sound super bad because I'm a San Josean by birth. But I wouldn't think that a print job in Morgan Hill would even have that much business. I mean, but there was is it mainly like people, I know this sounds horrible, please forgive me everybody, but like just pictures of people's like families, or was there actually like fine art workers?
It was such a mix.
Because I wouldn't think that business would be, come to San Jose to get it framed.
Right, so we were the only frame shop in Morgan Hill. There's another frame shop in Gilroy, but otherwise up in San Jose. But I think a lot of them had gone under during kind of the 2007, 2008, 2009. And so the ones that were left actually got quite a lot of business. And we had everything. We had photographs, we had baby shoes, we had like really amazing works of art that would come in. So we just kind of received everything, which made it really fun. You thought you knew everything, and then something would come in, and you're like, nope, this is something new this time.
Yeah, that's cool. And so then that frame shop, then, did they already have a kind of a gallery in the frame shop?
They didn't.
Okay.
No. Yeah, so it was started by Leah, and so Dan bought the frame shop in 2016.
Dan, what's his last
name? Dan McCranie.
Dan.
So he when I saw the job on Craigslist, he was the person to interview me
Okay.
and give me the job.
Yeah.
And at the time, he asked me, he was talking a little bit about his vision and why he bought the frame shop, and he talked about like wanting to start a gallery at some point.
Yeah.
And I just said, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I'd just love that at some point.
Yeah.
And so I think he kind of might have stored that in the back of his mind that, okay, here's this person
Who's interested.
who's interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so Leah ended up leaving because her husband got a job out east, and so he asked me to take over. So I was managing the frame shop, and then at some point he came to me and asked me, could you start this gallery?
Yeah.
What do you think? And I said, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, awesome.
So we started out really small.
Yeah.
So I contacted a couple people that I knew, and basically they were printmakers, because
that was your
printmakers can work in editions,
Yeah.
and so their pieces sometimes can be a little lower priced than like when there's only one of something like a painting.
Yeah.
So we started offering, some prints for sale
Yeah.
in the frame shop, and people were excited. And we just kind of expanded it from there.
And that's Colibri, right?
Yeah, that's Colibri Gallery.
And that was, so about what time did you, do you remember even when was the first kind of exhibit opening reception and stuff?
So we kind of expanded that and eventually moved more of the framing out of the gallery. We still had a framing showroom, but we did all the fitting and the making of the frames somewhere else at that time. But that was during the pandemic. Our first opening was, I think, in November of 2020.
Okay, yeah, nice.
So it was a crazy time, but I had my first child in the fall of 2019.
Okay.
And a few months later, everything shut down.
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of started finding artists.
Yeah.
So she didn't have daycare at the time because that had shut down. So in between her naps, I was online, I was on Instagram, I was contacting people I knew, contacting people I had found in the area. So it was a really exciting time.
Yeah, tough time, but
Yes.
fun. So, so then you started doing that. Now, it's because of Colibri that CURA Contemporary started,
Yes.
right? So what is that? What's the connection between those two? And because,
So Colibri kind of was our experiment. We were able to, it was small, we were able to really kind of try things out and see how they went. We were able to kind of see what artwork people gravitated towards. And one of the
as far as artwork, as far as clients and purchases and all that kind of stuff,
so we carried 2D work, we carried some sculpture like ceramics, we also carried some jewelry, wearable art basically. But one of the two major things we found is that people really wanted these experiences, these events. So we had two of those. It was every year we do a plein air kind of competition where we invite landscape painters who paint in the outdoors to come down and paint Morgan Hill, the surroundings around Morgan Hill. Cool. People can watch them, and then we hang up their paintings. We have an awards ceremony and kind of a wet paint sale. So the first year we did that all in one day. It was crazy. But the turnout we had, not enough people could fit in the gallery. People were spilling out into the sidewalks and the streets. So we had such a great response to kind of that event, people kind of seeing the process, meeting the artists. The other one that we did was every year we have a juried high school art show for the high school students here, homeschool, as well as the two high schools here, actually 3 high schools. And the turnout for that was amazing. So we had all the teachers could submit student work. We have 2 jurors. They go through that process. They can actually have their work for sale, so they kind of learn about that. And we invite everybody. We have an awards ceremony, and same thing. Not enough people could fit in the gallery to accommodate everybody. So we kind of learned that people.
There was a hunger.
There's a hunger for that. And the other thing we learned, was we started offering workshops. Workshops for adults, painting, printmaking, cyanotype we offered, but then we also found that there was a big demand for children's art workshops. And so we were able to kind of take all that experience there and bring it over here, and kind of we're expanding all that. So we offer art workshops for kids to adults. Every third Saturday we offer either a free or very affordable like kids art workshop. We're having a big jazz event kind of the day after Valentine's Day, where it's going to be kind of this immersive experience.
Yeah,
So
cool. Yeah.
that was great to start so small and be able to kind of really try things out.
Yeah. So then, like, was that particular time when you were at Colibri, I mean, were you kind of like, oh my gosh, I could teach a printmaking class? Was that kind of, I mean, like, I'm sure some of your passion is infused in it, right? And because even here at CURA, they're doing printmaking.
We have a printmaking press. Yeah. I do think that I'm like, oh my gosh, I could teach a printmaking class, and I'm like, wait a minute,
You're doing enough.
I'm doing enough.
Yeah.
So, but I'm able to like find people
Yeah.
that would be really great teachers,
Yeah.
or that I know are really great teachers. So that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, because Dan is the visionary behind CURA, right?
Yes.
And you kind of have partnered with him. He's has like teamed with you in order to make this place a reality.
He's been the greatest mentor ever. I mean, he comes from the tech industry. He's an electrical engineer, but he's just always loved art. He and his wife, like, that's what they did for fun. They'd travel and they'd go look at art. And so he's been a collector, and he'll never admit this, but I've seen his sketchbooks, his watercolor sketchbooks, and he is really good. I think if he didn't have all this other stuff going on, I mean, he's incredible. So he's been really great to do this with.
Yeah. Okay, so probably to get more in the details of CURA, but I kind of want to talk just more about you and your experience in forming this place and then the vision of it. So, I mean, I think that your fingerprints are in this place as well as Dan, right? You guys teamed on it. Yeah. But as having been an artist and being a teacher and then being a mom and being, like all kinds of different kind of things, frame maker, photographer, how do you think that shapes what you want to see happen here at CURA?
Let's see. I think so from the beginning. So when I first came in, Dan first hired me in 2017. I think there had already been kind of a first plan for something on this property. Yeah. It was 3 stories at the time. It was gallery. It was a full restaurant, and I think the more he learned about, if you have 3 stories, I think you have to have a separate elevator and another staircase. It just this is a very long, narrow lot. Yeah. So it just ate away at too much of the space. So he kind of got to that point and kind of scrapped it for a while. So then I think in about maybe 2020, he started he got back in touch with the architect and kind of had a little bit of a clearer vision, keeping it to 2 stories, really making it a piece of architecture that looked like you were walking into a gallery. So it's very different from Morgan Hill, but you're not going to mistake this for anything else. But let's see, going back to your original question, which was, so from the beginning, we agreed that we wanted this to be some place that was really welcoming. We wanted people to walk in and feel the warmth of the space. So it was really important to have a lot of wood in the space to make it a really architecturally relevant place, so people had a reason to come in. It's basically like a sculpture that you walk into and can experience.
But who was the architects that
KTGY Architects out of LA, and in particular, Sean. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. I'll get it to you. Sean Marino, I believe that's right, is the person that we worked with probably the most. But kind of that welcoming experience. We wanted it to be this immersive place. We wanted it to be able to offer workshops. We wanted a restaurant involved, so that would be a reason to bring people in, number one, but then also collaborating with a gallery and a restaurant and holding events and kind of being able to have these different experiences, these culinary experiences that we're just starting to kind of dream up. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think that it does display kind of like the multi-levels of kind of like the creative experience and aesthetics, right? I mean, from the architecture to having a restaurant and then having the art. I mean, it really does kind of play together. But it's not just meant to be a high-end white walls type of place. I mean, the teaching and the workshop aspect and the community part of it is really big, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had to fit a lot in this building. So we
Yeah.
had the workshops, the events, the gallery, the restaurant, and so it's not, like I said, the footprint is really small. So the architect and the interior designer were very creative in kind of creating a flexible space. So for instance, we have these movable walls in the middle of the first floor and the middle of the second floor that can rotate. And then the ones on the second floor can actually move out of the way, push out of the way. There's a track on the top and the bottom. And so the space we can completely open up for different size workshops and for events, for live music performances.
And then under the stairs, how you guys use that space for the So I'm just kind of super curious because it's a beautiful space, beautiful floor, beautiful art on the walls. Now you're bringing kids in to throw paint around in the midst of that. How does that?
That's the best.
How does that? It makes me a little nervous.
So I think you're touching it. So the storage is a big thing. So we don't have. I think we have one pedestal out next to the kind of the front desk. But there's no other pedestals. Everything breakable is kind of up on shelves, and so it would be pretty difficult to break something.
So then when you do a workshop, do you do it up here in this room and you move the walls out?
We move the walls. We have these great tables that fold down. We have chairs. And we use a lot of acrylic paint with kids or watercolor with kids.
Sure, stuff that cleans up.
But everything cleans up really easily. It's just
And how often are
working.
you doing? And then so you're doing that for the youths, and then what about? And then you're doing adult stuff too.
Yes.
So what is give us a little idea of the programming that happens?
So something that's been really popular, we have a figure drawing collective that we offer for artists. So once a month, the first Sunday afternoon of the month, we have up to 15. I think we just pushed it up to 20 because it's been so popular. But artists are able to come and paint or draw from a live professional model. And
so they bring their own supplies, but you guys have easels for them
we have
here?
the easels, we have the side tables, we have a platform for the model, and so that's something that we do every month. But then we have painting workshops. We're scheduling printmaking workshops for adults. We have a sewing workshop, like to kind of repair your own clothes with fun patches. That's kind of for teenagers and adults. So we kind of offer a variety of different workshops and ages, and kind of from very, very fine art, professional level artists workshops to people that are just kind of learning and want to just take a painting class. Beginning painting classes are really popular. So.
And then, of course, we have the artists who are displaying, speak. I know Alan Barnes just did something last month, or?
Yes, he's got a solo show down on the first floor. So we've got 4 really local artists. So Alan Barnes, Abiam Alvarez, Jillian Guslin, and Janet Vanderhoof. So Alan and Abiam teach at the high school, which is great. So we get their students in. They're fabulous artists, and that kind of gives us that connection to the school, and helps us with kind of the juried student art show. So there's this connection that's just really, I think, symbiotic for both sides.
Cool. So then when you look at the 5 years from now for CURA Contemporary, how would you see it? What would it be? What would it be doing?
I think it would be a lively place that's full of kids and people of all different ages and backgrounds from different areas. We hope to draw from as far south as Monterey and Carmel, and as far north as San Francisco. I think we see this as being just a place for people to come together and meet and learn, along with having the printmaking press and kind of offering the workshops. Education is very important to us. We think that when people kind of learn about what goes into making a work of art, to understand the process, to kind of hear the artist background, that they really learn to appreciate the artwork. So kind of that's a guiding principle of ours is learning and education just for the sake of how wonderful art is on one's life, but then also just greater appreciation as a whole.
Yeah. So then kind of take me back to, because you're here now, but take me back to when you and your husband were in Iowa or wherever it was, and he was going to be, he had this opportunity to move, and then you, I don't know, like, were you a little reluctant? You're like, okay, I'm trying to establish something here. Yeah. And like, what was that kind of conversation like? And then throw in to how, but now you're really involved in like all the disciplines that you've learned over your life, surprisingly in Morgan Hill, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could have never imagined.
Right.
I was really excited that he had this job in California, but like I was the most nervous about just the cost. Like you hear how expensive California is. Yeah. So I think, that's probably the next thing on the horizon is, creating some kind of affordable housing for artists, kind of an artist cooperative in a way here in Morgan Hill. Yeah, cool. So I think that's definitely kind of the next step. But we hope that other galleries will come to the area. Colibri Gallery, my colleague Abigail Donovan is taking over. So she hopes to open up in February. And will that be more kind of focused on just kind of like local art? No, it'll be some local and national artists as well. But probably a little bit more representative, kind of figurative. Okay. But yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see all the artists that she's put together. She's been working really hard on that. But so there'll be 2 galleries here, but we hope even more will come. Yeah, that's good. So then, what would you say in the being here, what were some things you feel like were just kind of like surprised opportunities, and then what was then your own personal action to like have kind of like be here today at CURA? Oh gosh, I think I was just open to something new. I think when you go to grad school and you get an MFA, you're taught by people that have their MFA and that have gone into teaching. So I think whether it's specifically taught or not, you think that, okay, well, I can teach or I can be an artist. Right. When really there's like so many different opportunities. So I would just say like being open to different opportunities. My professor, my mentor, Anita Jung, just said, as long as, you can do anything you want to, but, just always keep doing your art. And so whether I was teaching, I always did my art. And that really helped me along the way. There's a lot of things in academia that you just don't have a whole lot of control of, but like doing your art is one thing that you have control over. And thinking about it now, like I'm not doing my art, but this is so fulfilling that I mean, art is problem solving and it's collaborating, and this is all those things, like finding the artists, finding the workshops, like making connections, coming to different, if there's a problem, like collaborating and kind of finding a different solution. Like this is all that and more. So it's a creative way, but maybe it's not necessarily like putting ink on paper. Yeah. But it's definitely that's good. So. What's some advice would you give, having kind of like with your career, like what's some advice would you give to maybe some startup, artists that are just beginning their career, if they're looking to be, in a gallery or, build a career? What's some advice would you give them? Let's see. Some advice I would give them is, you're going to have to work really hard. That's good. You have to get good about writing about your work, kind of all that professional development work, taking good photographs of your work, and then, being able to be really good about communicating, what your work is about, and just being really easy to work with. So we love working with fabulous artists, and if they're really professional and they get back to us promptly with their emails and already have pictures of their work and have writing about their work, that just makes our life so much easier. And we can take their work even farther when they have kind of that foundation. So I think just like experimenting, not being afraid to try new things, new media, but then kind of creating a body of work. So we see a lot of artists apply to have shows, and they kind of don't have a very cohesive body of work. So that's kind of the first thing we look for is like, okay, do they have a body of work that kind of
shows like their voice?
Yeah, all kind of fits together.
Yeah.
And for us, the work that we look for is unexpected. It's not derivative of someone else's work.
Yeah.
It has an energy to it that shows kind of mastery of what they're doing in their media. And for us, it's very tactile. So we like to see the process. We like to see the texture.
Yeah.
And we like color. So,
okay.
But there's a lot of different galleries out there. So I think another thing that I'd recommend is like there's this connection. Just because you're an artist and we're a gallery doesn't mean we're going to be a good fit.
Right.
Every gallery kind of has their own strengths and kind of what they look for, and so kind of creating a good pairing, going and visiting the galleries and asking yourself, does my work fit here?
Yeah.
Is there other work like mine? Is there not that it should be too similar, but like is the kind of feel of this gallery, does that work with my artwork?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because not only does the artist have a style, but each gallery has their own, because of the curators and stuff like that, or their own interests. Yeah, that's good. To find that fit, look for that fit. Yeah,
kind of look for that.
So
good
one
fit.
no at one gallery doesn't mean the end
exactly.
of the world.
Yes, yeah, and not to take. So yes, and I love that. I want to go a little bit further on what you just said, because when I was applying to all the teaching jobs, like I got so many, like putting together a packet, not only for teaching jobs, but to apply for shows. You got to resize all your images differently. Yeah. Upload everything, different JPEGs, different max sizes. It takes so long, right? And so when you get that no, it can be really defeating. But just because, like what you said, just because one person says no doesn't mean somebody's not going to say yes, because everybody has their own thing that they're looking for. Yeah. So was
there ever a time where you got a no where it really crushed you, where you almost kind of thought, or you were hitting a dry spell of some sort, that you were kind of like, or?
Let's see. I think with jobs, when I was applying for jobs, I actually, they flew me in and they interviewed me, and I thought it went really well. And then they canceled the search. So like something that they were looking, like none of the candidates that they had flown in and interviewed fit what they were looking for. And I think I was crushed, because I had thought about living in the city and thought about like moving there, and like I felt like I really got along with the other people that worked there. And so that was crushing. But I think I heard later, that I just wasn't a good fit, and that was probably a good thing. You know, like they were looking for something else and I wasn't what they were looking for. And
well,
that
now
was
you
okay.
found a good fit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it baffles me in a way, just like what it takes in the world that you happen to get the job at the framing place with Dan, and you know what I mean? And then with your experience, it really is kind of like a once in a lifetime.
Yes.
It's almost like CURA's like made for you.
It is crazy. Like I say this all the time, but it's like, is this my life? Like, am I going to wake up from a dream? Like, how did this happen? I don't know.
And I know you, it's called, and I know you're busy. So are you finding a little bit more now? You're getting more of an itch to start do a little bit more of your own kind of work a little bit, or it's in the back of your head, but you're like looking at the timeline. You have two small.
Yeah, I've got a
girls,
5-year-old and a 16-month-old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So most of the art I do. So this job completely fulfills that need for me. But most of the art I do is drawings with my kid and coming up with art projects for them. I've got my 5-year-old, that's her go-to. She loves doing art projects. Like she comes home on the weekends, and she comes home from school on the weekends, and she's like, what art project are we gonna do?
You're
so it's like, okay,
dinner?
Okay, so that's that's where my art is now, and but I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, there's seasons too, right? I mean, this is like a season where you're launching CURA, getting it established, moving on that, and then you have your family life too.
But I mean, as an artist, you worry about those dry spells, but it's always happened that you're constantly storing things, whether you're keeping a sketchbook or just visual memories, like you're constantly storing stuff. And where I left off, like felt really good, and I feel like I could go back and know immediately where to start again.
Yeah. So and then your personal work, you did a lot kind of like with prisms, right? Or crystal type shapes. What was that inspiration? What was that about?
I have this love of geometry.
Okay.
And I think my architecture kind of interests come in is creating these shapes. So those shapes came from Platonic shapes.
Okay.
And wow, this memory is very rusty.
Yeah,
but Plato kind of thought that the world made sense and could be distilled into kind of these Platonic shapes.
Yeah.
So
the perfect forms.
Yeah.
And stuff,
And so my work, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist.
Okay.
So in my process, I've learned that I need to kind of work with media that I can't have control over in a way. So I kind of created these backgrounds that were very chaotic. So I do cyanotype and lay things on top, and I didn't exactly know how they were going to turn out.
Yeah.
So you had this really kind of chaotic background, and then these geometric forms I placed on top to kind of make sense of this chaos.
You just couldn't let go.
I can't let go. I need to be make sense of things. And I think just my personality, like when I run into anything I don't understand, I have this need, I really want to understand, I want to learn. Yeah. And so I think that fits in there somewhere. But then kind of going back into, for a minute, I thought about being a psychology major. And so I've always been really interested in psychology. Yeah. So the body of work that I ended up creating out here when I first came to California at CURA was coping strategies. So Sigmund Freud's, he had a word for it, but coping strategies is the more modern take on it, but kind of observing how people would react differently to kind of the same situation and kind of figuring out, dividing up these different kind of coping mechanisms, denial and sticking your head in the sand and then kind of confronting your stressor. And so a lot of my work kind of involved psychology and kind of people's reaction and perception. Yeah, that's cool. If you think if you were to pick up today, okay, you need to create a show for next June, would you go back into that kind of exploration of kind of I think I would, yeah. That's kind of where I ended up with kind of those architectural elements, and that was just really pleasing to me. Yeah, cool. And so I think I'd dive back in there. I think I'd work larger. Okay. And I had this idea in the back of my head of soaking a canvas in cyanotype, and then exposing it and painting on top of it and kind of working larger. And so cool. That's probably where I'd go. So that's a preview of something from 5 years from now. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Are you a reader? Are you reading anything, or what book has kind of affected you? Or let's see. I do not read. I tuck my kids in bed at night. And crash. And I crash. It's a different, But yeah. What about music? What kind of music do you like? What do you listen to? Oh, my go-to is jazz. Okay, yeah. I'm so affected by music. I'm very particular about what I listen to, but jazz is kind of the thing that I can have on in the background and gets me in a good mood, and it's light and energetic. Who's one of your? Is there any particular album or artist for jazz that you like? Are you a Chet Baker? Let's see. I'm not an aficionado by any means. My go-to is the LA Jazz, the LA Jazz Quartet. That's what I usually put on. Yeah, cool. Right on. Yeah. Have you listened to Chet Baker? And have you watched that film? No. You should check it out. Okay. Super cool. Kind of goofy. Bruce. Oh, what's his name? I have a famous photographer from the 80s. Bruce Weber. Okay. Did a whole story on it. And Chet Baker lived in San Francisco. He was it's actually really, it's kind of surreal, and his music is great. Okay, that we're going to play that today on Spotify. Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, let's see. I think that's it. Why don't you just tell us then real kind of hours and all that kind of, just the logistics and how people can find out about CURA Contemporary and stuff like that. Yeah, so we have a website. It's curacontemporary.com, and we're open 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday, 11 to 8. And right now, Vera, the restaurant, is open for dinners Tuesday through Sunday, 4 to 8.
Yeah, awesome, cool. And last thing, what right now is giving you the most joy in your life?
I love bringing my daughters in here on the weekends. My 16-month-old daughter, whoa, jumping ahead there, my 16-month-old daughter needs to take a nap, and so she's a little bit reluctant to take naps. So I usually take everybody, the 5-year-old, the 16-month-old, and the dog on a walk down here on weekends and bring them in before we open up and show them around. And they love it, and I'm proud of it, so it's really nice sharing that with them. And I bring my 5-year-old in here for the children's art workshops, and that's just like full circle seeing all that. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you, and congratulations on the opening.
Thank you.
You guys opened, what month was it? November,
mid-November
2024.
Yeah.
And this is just January, so
we're just picking up steam. So
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you again.
Sounds great.
Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the South Bay creatives. This episode's music is 408 by Jack Pavlina. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Jack Pavlina Music.